Hello again, Internet. It's Shin here with another Minecraft Dungeons video. This one is going to be a bit different from what I normally put out because it's going to be talking about game mechanics as well as talking about the game's community. If you're a member of the Discord community, or even on Reddit, you might have seen the movement #DitchMeleeHeals. This movement was apparently started by individuals who seem to think people don't know about Lifesteal, and it's supposed to advocate for the use of Lifesteal instead of Leeching or Radiance, mainly Leeching. Or at least, it claims to be about proving Lifesteal is a legitimate healing source in place of Leeching and Radiance, which isn't something that needs proving to begin with. Not only that, but #DitchMeleeHeals comes off as a more hostile way to word their point, and comes across sounding more like #OnlyUse Wither Armor or Spider Armor or Mystery Armor with Lifesteal. The truth is that I didn't want to have to make this video in the first place, because I'm honestly in the camp of not giving a damn what healing you use as long as it works, but I've noticed a certain level of toxicity involved with the movement, unintentional or not, including seeing constant shade being thrown on me, which is forcing me to talk about this, but I'll go more into that later. Instead, I want to just focus on the surface point of the movement, which is mainly Leeching versus Lifesteal. However, this is causing a stigma to form around using Leeching and Radiance in general, to the point of it causing people to have a condescending demeanor towards those who use them, and going so far as to say that Lifesteal is the superior healing option to Leeching, and basically that people who use Lifesteal are superior players. They claim that misinformation has caused players to have a negative reaction to Lifesteal, but now this misinformation is causing a negative reaction towards Leeching and Radiance. It's not solving a problem, it's just swinging it in the other direction. Now, if you know me, I like to take an objective stance towards these kinds of things. If I let my personal bias get in the way, then things like Grave Bane, Jailer's Scythe, Sinister Sword, and Hammer of Gravity would be SS tier weapons because they're in my top 10 favorites. Same with my favorite armor. But that's not how I operate. That's never been how I operate. So let's talk about Leeching and Lifesteal objectively. First off, what are they? Leeching heals the player by 9% of a mob's max HP when their weapon kills that mob. It has to be a kill made by their melee weapon, and indirect damage doesn't count. So if your diamond sword has swirling for whatever reason, and that swirling damage kills the mob, you don't get healed. Lifesteal, on the other hand, heals the player by 6% of the damage they deal to a mob. This is limited to how much health the mob has, and only counts for the player's physical damage, with one exception. Just from that alone, you see Lifesteal heals less but triggers every hit you land, and Leeching heals more but it triggers on kill. On the surface, you'd be right, but there's more to it than that. And now, since I'm not a biased individual and never have been, I'm going to start by listing the benefits to using Lifesteal instead of Leeching. Well, I say that, but this is why I find this topic silly in the first place. Lifesteal is an armor perk and Leeching is a weapon enchant. They're not mutually exclusive. You can use them together, you won't get thrown in Minecraft jail if you do. And one of the arguments for this movement is, this healing is the best, but no. Taking advantage of Lifesteal armor to combine it with Leeching would be better healing than either option alone. I do that and can say that it alone makes you absolutely immortal. Anyway, just for the sake of comparing Lifesteal to Leeching, here are some advantages Lifesteal has that Leeching doesn't. First off, Lifesteal is an aura. This means that it affects your friends in multiplayer as well as your pets. This can keep your pets alive way past their expiration date and is arguably the best aura to give your team in multiplayer so they have extra passive healing on top of whatever healing they might have. Second off, you get Lifesteal recovery from range damage and most artifact damage as well. While this might not exactly be useful for melee builds unless they're using Imploding Crossbow, this means you can heal without getting close to the enemy. Soul builds especially make great use of this, and I should know because I started this game off as a Soul main. Corrupted Beacon was great for refilling your health from long distance. Thirdly, if enemies have heals allies or if they have regeneration and are somehow getting away with healing a lot, you get more healing from Lifesteal. Meanwhile, Leeching only heals you by 9% of a mob's max health, not accounting for the health that they've recovered. Fourthly, if you're fighting something like a boss that's taking a while to kill and you can't dodge it very well, that Lifesteal healing could save your life. However, this is where Lifesteal's benefits end. True, foregoing Leeching for Lifesteal would free you up an enchantment slot, but for the purposes of having immortal levels of healing, would it be better than just running Leeching with Lifesteal anyway? Because if you just want enough healing, either Leeching or Lifesteal works overall. One argument I've seen, which just repeats my own point that I made in the first place, is that your healing with Leeching is basically 9% of your DPS, and Lifesteal is 6% of your DPS. You might see a pattern with points that I've made in the first place being repeated to me as if I wasn't the one who introduced them to begin with. Anyway, this means that Leeching's healing per second is more than Lifesteal's healing per second, and since they're based on your DPS, replacing Leeching with a damage enchant would increase your DPS, therefore increasing Lifesteal's healing per second past Leeching's. However, there's two problems with this logic. First off, Leeching is 50% more healing than Lifesteal at face value, and aside from Void Strike and Enchanting, which any good weapon build would already have, no other enchant would increase the weapon's DPS by 50% to make Lifesteal match Leeching, with the exception of Enigma Resonator, which is limited to soul weapons. But even if it could, the second point is that no matter how much DPS you have, the amount of health mobs have is limited. If a mob has 13 million health, even if your Lifesteal build has higher DPS than a Leeching one, you are healing 6% of that 13 million while the Leeching build is healing 9%. It is slightly faster healing, but it's not more total healing. But now, what if we focused on defense instead? Leeching is 50% more healing than Lifesteal, but the reverse is that Lifesteal is 33% less healing than Leeching. That's how percentages work. So, what if you ran Weakening in place of Leeching? That's 40% damage reduction, so it'll more than make up for it. This, again at face value, is true, but it depends on your weapon. If two enemies that do the same damage are coming at you, and your weapon hits one of them with Weakening, the mob you hit will have their damage reduced by 40%, but the other mob will still deal full damage, so you've only really reduced 20% of that total damage. So, while Weakening is an amazing enchant and I would never say otherwise, it almost never comes out to a full 40% damage reduction in a swarm situation, unless using it on a double axe or anchor weapon. However, none of this so far touches on the fundamental difference between Leeching and Lifesteal, and no, it is not in their healing amount, but it's how they work. For the best way to get my point across, let me give you a video example. Against the same enemy, I'm gonna first use my Hungry Horror with a Bone Club that has Void Strike, Enchanting, Guarding Strike, and Leeching, with 60.6% damage reduction. So, I hit the Armored Vindicator, he hit me, and then I finished him off to get all my health back, Leeching working as intended. Now, what if I switch Hungry Horror for Spider Armor, and Leeching for Weakening? Now I'll have 70% damage reduction.
Dear oh dear, what was it?
Huh, what happened? My health isn't full after killing it, and I don't have my Cowardice boost anymore. If we look carefully, by the time the Armored Vindicator hit me, I'd taken out 75% of his health. This meant that he only had 25% of his health left for me to heal from. The first 75% didn't heal me because I was already full, so instead of healing about 281,000 total health from him, I only healed 66,358. In short, I only healed by about 1.5% of his max HP, so even with Weakening upping my damage reduction, Lifesteal didn't heal me back to full. This is the fundamental problem with Lifesteal in terms of its healing amount and how it works. Any hits that you land while at full health is healing that you're missing out on, so you're not getting as much healing from the mobs when they do hit you. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't run with Lifesteal as your only healing option. I can do it just fine as you see here, and it's no problem. It's just that, with the way it's designed, unless you start an encounter with less than full health, you will never get that full 6% healing. If you're taking out most of a mob's health before they hit you once, then you're actually healing less than 3% of the damage you're dealing, which can cause you to come up short after an encounter more than with Leeching. This isn't necessarily a problem because it could still be enough healing. This just goes to show that the way Leeching works makes it superior healing. It heals you when it matters most. When fighting a mob, you don't want healing while you're at full health, you would want it when your health is the lowest so you get the most value out of it. And your health would be at its lowest at the end of any encounter when the enemy is killed. This makes sure no healing is lost. Now, I've been told that Anima Conduit can help make up for the healing that Lifesteal misses out on. I personally find Imploding Crossbow better for healing with Lifesteal because it does a lot of damage to heal from, and it's just a better ranged weapon in general. But if you need another healing enchant to supplement Lifesteal, doesn't that mean that Lifesteal's not as good at healing on its own? Also, there's a bit of a problem with Anima Conduit. As you can see, my health looks full, but it's not. I didn't get my Cowardice boost back. Anima Conduit heals less and less the closer you get to full health, eventually healing just 1 HP, so if you're even missing just 2 HP, Anima Conduit won't heal you up to full. Now, speaking about wasted healing with Lifesteal, the one member advocating for #DitchMelee has argued to me that if you kill a mob with Leeching without being hit, that healing is wasted too. And that's true, but it's missing a crucial detail. The mob is dead, it can't hurt you anymore, so it doesn't matter if the healing was wasted. With Lifesteal, the issue is hitting a mob while at full health and the mob is still alive, meaning it can hit you and waste that healing that you didn't get. So, to kinda summarize, for enemies you're killing in one hit, Leeching is better than Lifesteal since they're both triggering on kill, but Leeching is more healing. For enemies you're killing before they can hit you, Leeching is better than Lifesteal since, if you're missing any health, it's more health recovered. For enemies that are hitting you while you're fighting them, Leeching is better than Lifesteal because no damage is wasted healing, meaning you're healing more and better nullifying that damage that you're taking. The only time that having Lifesteal's on-hit healing would be objectively more beneficial than Leeching is if you're fighting a mob or a group that you can't kill before they kill you, but this would be due to a fundamental problem with the build that you're using as a whole. Excluding broken enemy enchants like Levitation Shot, the builds in my guides, which I use myself in videos, never run into this problem. Yes, Lifesteal is constant healing, but so is Leeching, and I feel like those advocating for Lifesteal instead of Leeching have played so long without Leeching that they forget how often it triggers. Many of you watching this video have probably seen a few of my Minecraft Dungeons runs on my channel. I have hundreds if not thousands of hours in this game. Even when fighting large groups, mobs are dying constantly and my health is constantly filling right back up, all just from Leeching. And in the game's current form, an endgame build can take out mobs in an average of 2 to 4 hits, so Lifesteal is only getting you that healing maybe 1 or 2 hits before Leeching, and you're getting less for it while those first few hits you're landing are likely not healing you anything at all because you're most likely at full health. It's the perfect example of sacrificing a large, long-term reward for smaller, short-sighted immediate gain out of impatience. Sure, with Leeching you might take a bit more damage before you get healed, and it can be a little scary seeing your health drop a bit more, but every enchanted mob killed is essentially a full health refill, and the combination of Void Strike and Enchanting demolishes enchanted mobs. Plus there's often a mix of weaker mobs in the group too, which die quicker and give you intermediate health and Guarding Strike triggers. My health usually doesn't drop below 75% in those group situations. And speaking of, this same person on team #DitchMelee has said that they are better because they have a better build, because they can tank hits and play casually and just heal it off with Lifesteal, while I, quote-unquote, have to dodge. First off, I can do the same thing too with Leeching and Renegade armor. It's not that hard. Or Leeching and Fox armor. Or Leeching in any armor. I dodge hits because, well, for one thing, it looks cool for videos, but also, I am a hardcore Soulsborne player at heart. If anyone's seen my Sword Art Online videos, my Nier Automata videos, my Saints Row videos, my Castlevania Symphony of the Night videos, my Dragon Ball Xenoverse videos, my Dark Souls videos, my Dark Souls 3 videos, my Bloodborne videos, whatever videos that I do, they would know that I don't like to play casually. I just simply like to put in extra effort and employ some level of skill in this game, even if it's not needed. I personally feel like a scrub if I take a hit that I know I could have dodged. But the idea that a player is better because they can play casually is also kinda backwards thinking. In other games, especially the Souls community, the best player is not the one who levels up a ton and uses the best gear to tank the bosses and heal the damage off. The most impressive players are always the ones who do those bosses at level 1 and kill them with their bare fists without taking any hits, because they dodge them with expert timing and knowledge of how the enemies work. Basically because it shows a high degree of understanding and mastery of the game in order to pull that off. It's true that part of what makes a good player is having the knowledge of good gear and enchant combos to use. This is something that I have as well. But another part of being a good player is having in-depth knowledge of not only how the weapons work so you can attack for the most advantage to minimize incoming damage, but also knowing how the enemies work so you can dodge them expertly. Now, is this dodging needed? Not really. But it is fun dodging Vindicators, Blastlings, Vanguards, Royal Guards, Squall Golems, Skeletons, Pillagers, etc. And learning to dodge them when they're not threatening is good practice for dealing with ones that have threatening enchants later on. Now, as for what I mentioned briefly near the beginning of this video, I've seen this movement being used as a way to throw shade on me and to defame me. saying things like, Shin is overrated, Shin spreads misinformation, Shin this, Shin that. That is what causes me to get involved and respond, because it's a character and credibility attack. These comments are coming from someone who joined the Discord community back when I'd already been established in the community. They hadn't even started Apocalypse Plus yet, while I was talking about strategies and enchant combos regarding Apocalypse Plus 20. I shared my thoughts, my info, my logic, my formulas, and my ways of thinking with him and the others in the group. That formed into a lot of the common knowledge for the game that exists now. Not all of it, but a good amount of it. I have been wrong with some calculations, but I've always corrected them myself because I'm always checking my work. I always retest things every update to make sure that nothing changed. Back at that early time when gravity was hated, I shared my opinion of it and the useful applications it has, as well as the weapons that it benefits. Same for Wild Rage. The Imploding Crossbow God Roll is my design. The Soul Build weapon, armor, and crossbow God Rolls are my design, because I was the only dedicated Soul Build player there since it's not popular. The Melee Void Collar and Feral Soul Crossbow God Rolls are one enchant away from the ones that I used for the old Apocalypse Plus 20, because back then Gilded wasn't a thing. The way damage enchants are viewed and calculated, as well as how other things are calculated, was introduced by me. This on top of a lot of other things. This is because, in the Gear Help and Main Topic section, when I would say to use something or to not use something, I would explain in detail why. I would explain all the applications you could get out of something, all the ways something is useful versus something else, how it makes them pair with different things. It really helped change the way things are looked at now. That person adopted all of this info, this data, those numbers, and the points that I was making because I was introducing those things with them right there. A bit after I would bring up a point for something, they would word for word repeat those points in the Gear Help section to newer players and get credit for it. Even the things that I would be mathematically wrong about, and I'd later correct myself. And I mean, sharing info to help others is fine. You can't always help it if people think that you were the one behind that info. You're just passing it along. I get that. But when you start making info sheets and guides using someone else's data, info, and points, and crediting the whole thing fully to yourself, and then go farther to discredit the person who is responsible for that information to begin with, and go even farther to gain an elevated reputation in the community with that copied information while simultaneously saying that the person who you copied to get to that position is overrated, and constantly throw shade at them, it doesn't show any appreciation for their contributions or even any camaraderie with them. They even go so far as to call themselves the best player in the game, and that things are meta because they declare them meta. It comes off as egotistical and honestly off-putting, which is why I don't have that attitude myself. I've been called the best player a lot, but I've never called myself that. Whenever I'm called the best, I respond by saying it's not really a skill-based game and it's hard to be quote-unquote the best at it. And while I have introduced things that change the general way of thinking about the game, and my DPS charts in the past have helped change the way a lot of weapons are looked at, I would never claim such authority to just declare something meta at my command. Meta weapons are meta regardless of what we say. We don't change how they perform, nor can we change how much the community uses them just by declaring them good or bad. That would come from constant talking and things spreading around and just showing it in general with examples to get people to catch on to that idea. Now, all of this shade could be coming out because I don't agree with everything that they say. I got my reputation in the first place because I didn't always agree with everything everyone was saying. When they make points, like the ones I mentioned throughout this video, there are holes in the logic that they missed which I'll point out. I don't do it to be mean, I've always been like this. But it feels like this whole Lifesteal movement is just to be a contrarian to where I say in my guide that the best enchant balance for a weapon is 2 damage enchants, 1 defensive enchant, and 1 healing enchant. But nowhere do I say that this is necessary, or that my guide has all of the enchant combos that you can run. There's plenty that I don't mention that you can use. This is just the best balance for any build. If you don't run Leeching or Radiance or a specific kind of build, then you have to run Spider Armor, Wither Armor, or Mystery Armor with Lifesteal, and there are a lot more armors than that. And my formula works really well. Healing and defense goes a long way in this game, so you only need 1 enchant for each, while 2 for damage rounds it out. 1 for general damage and 1 for enchanted mobs, since those mobs are the reason why Apocalypse Plus 25 is so different from normal Apocalypse. It's not the small stat boosts, it's because it has 4.2 times more enchanted mobs, which are the most threatening and take the longest to kill. But you can totally run with just 2 healing enchants, 2 defensive enchants, 3 damage enchants, or hell, even 4 damage enchants. You don't have to stick to the formula. You can deviate to fit your own preference. The guide is just to be the most player-friendly. Not running melee healing enchants only mainly works on Lifesteal builds, while Leeching or Radiance works on any armor build, including Lifesteal armors. Plus, it gives players the most healing value, and if they're reading my guides, they most likely would prefer to have more healing value until they're comfortable with trying something else. And similarly, I could list Ambush as a damage option on all weapons because Glow Squid armor not only makes amazing use of it with its ink, but is just amazing armor in general since 70 to 80% of mobs' attacks miss you from that ink. And it helps your friends out too. But I already provide that information with Ambush and Glow Squid armor in the guide. Anyway, while I've been in debates about this, I've been told Lifesteal is better than Leeching, and the on-hit healing makes it better and more able to maintain Cowardice. I've never been told how or why this is true, but I feel like I did a pretty thorough job here explaining why the opposite is more true. That's part of how I got my reputation. I make sure I really explain things as well as I can to give people the best idea of why something is good, bad, better, or worse. Or at least, to give them a better understanding of my reasoning, because even that can help them form their own ideas. And it's not to say that this person in the community hasn't had their own ideas and data as well, it's just, I've never gone after them myself. I would only ever say something in response to me being poked at. I would prefer to think of us as friends rather than enemies or even rivals. I just don't appreciate when I'm constantly disregarded and discredited, with constant remarks attempting to put down what I built up and put a lot of work into, pretending that I was barely there, and riding on success that was originally built up from my hard work. That's just not cool. Over the months they've gone from copying my ideas and info, to building onto some, and then to coming up with good ones or usable ones on their own, ones that are worthy of earning a name for themselves. They don't need to try to undermine me or put me down in order to be recognized. And the reason that I didn't mention them by name is because this isn't to start a mob attack on anyone. Not everyone with #DitchMeleeHeals is like this. This was just to talk about an issue and my feelings towards it. This person has had some good ideas and insight and a bunch of their own research and data for other things. Not all the ideas are winners, and I don't fundamentally or mathematically agree with others, and will make an essay on my reasons why, but they've been putting in their own recognizable effort which deserves recognition in its own right. Anyway, use Leeching or Lifesteal, whichever you want, both work fine. There is fundamentally almost no difference between either build. If you really want the absolute best healing that can make you unkillable, just use both. But you can totally use just Leeching and not have to potion, even without Guarding Strike. I do it all the time. It's not really skill because the hits I dodge don't need to be dodged. But I list Guarding Strike because that absolutely will ensure you don't need to potion. It's not needed, but it is the best option for a slot on your weapon. And against bosses, most of them have minions that you can get Leeching and Guarding Strike from too, so again, it's no real problem. And that's all I have for now. Until next time.